Chicago has long attracted big conventions and tons of tourists. But will all the national publicity about the city's rising violence give those visitors second thoughts? Lauren Cohn tackles that question.
Thanks, Chris. With all the problems Chicago is facing in the political arena, the economy, high crime rate, the one area it may be getting right is tourism. Chicago remains one of the most popular destinations for both domestic and international travelers. Chicago broke tourism records in 2015. For the first time in the city's history, 52 million visitors traveled here.
We are seeing some unprecedented travel and tourism boom for the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois.
Chicago's Tourism Bureau, Choose Chicago's interim CEO Mark Anderson says he's optimistic about 2016, but says there are some challenges.
We knew coming into 2016 that it was going to be a down year from the amazing 2015 we had, and one of the reasons for that was due to the Olympic bid the city had in the mid-2000s. A number of conventions that were looking at us for 2016 decided to stay away because of the thought process that the Olympics might be in our cities.
When asked about Chicago's violence making national headlines as a deterrent for travelers, Anderson didn't express concern.
Our city is doing so much to address this concern. We stand with the mayor's office and the state of Illinois.
Chicago Tribune reporter Robert Chanik found Chicago has 9 fewer conventions and 187,000 fewer hotel rooms booked than last year at this time. Advertising was scaled back last year as Choose Chicago waited months for budget dollars from the state to roll in. And he says Chicago's high crime rate could be a factor.
It's not a leap that I would comfortably make, but it's been posited by some people that it's a challenge.
Suburban tourism bureaus are also keeping a close eye on Chicago. Meet Chicago Northwest President Dave Perillo says his region, which covers 8 communities, did well in 2015, up nearly 7% from the previous year. But 2016 may not be so fortunate.
So we are concerned that as Chicago is running softer for 2016, of course the whole Chicagoland is going to experience a softer market.
If Chicago tourism drops, so does traffic to the Northwest. So Dave Perillo is focusing on big draws and pouring his ad dollars into local campaigns and not other states.
Our region is particularly known for being a meetings and conventions destination with over 60 hotels. We have a large convention center here in Schaumburg. Of course, some of our leisure destinations include Woodfield Mall and Arlington Park Racecourse.
So what about the tourists who flock to the museums, enjoy the lakefront, and pose for pictures at the famous Bean? What do they say?
We never thought about the violence and stuff. All we think is, come and visit Chicago just for the view and the city.
I work in Oakland, so I've seen worse.
Events like the NFL Draft and Lollapalooza helped boost tourism for Chicago last year. And now new promotions are already highlighting what we can expect this summer. For the first time, Chicago is hosting the America's Cup, the James Beard Awards, and Copa America soccer tournament. Choose Chicago says it's on track to meet Mayor Emanuel's goal of 55 million visitors by 2020.
There's a pretty good chance if you look at the trajectory. I mean, it's up, I think, from about 43 million visitors back in 2011. There's still a lot of good things to sell about the city. I think the chances of getting there, and it's just a prognostication, are still pretty good. They're not that far. They're 3 million shy.
And I think, Chris, that Robert Chanik from the Tribune makes a good point, and that is there is a lot that's great about the city with all the bad publicity we do get about crime. And one thing I want to point out that Choose Chicago brought up is that they have created 15,000 jobs through tourism in the last 5 years. 3,800 of those were just last year. So that is something that is positive.
As you pointed out, though, we're going to see a drop in 2016. The officials attributed that to the Olympics not being in Chicago. But we've known that Chicago is not going to get the Olympics since 2009. How does that account for such a drop this year?
Well, so many conventions book in advance. So when they saw that, oh, we may get it in 2016, they pulled out. And conventions can be cyclical. So we can see some conventions coming in, some conventions coming out, and so they're not quite sure. And what's interesting also to point out is that, you know, we did so well last year, which brought in a lot of money. They had $14.9 billion in direct spending by visitors. So when you break that down, the hotels made money, the restaurants made money, the businesses made money. We hope that happens this year, and it continues into 2017, but we don't know.
As you pointed out in your story, there have been not only local headlines, but of course national and international global headlines about Chicago violence. How do tourism officials here counter that? What's their strategy to kind of downplay that?
Well, they don't really want to address it, and they may be behind closed doors, not to us. Their strategy has been, let's focus on the domestic markets, let's focus on leisure, not even focus so much on international. But the conversation does have to be had about the crime, because we don't want to see it, you know, change the pattern of where we're headed in terms of positive tourism.
And I suppose tourists know there are some areas to stay away from just for safety.
They do, absolutely, and that's what they pointed out in our story. You know, they're going to the areas where, you know, there's the Bean, there's Millennium Park, there's the museums where they know, and they're being careful about how they travel there.